Hey Carew, this is Brad and I in our visit to Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. Man, they are fat.
They are, aren't they?
They're fat little buggers. I'm tempted to approach them, except for the sign said not to approach the wildlife. Yeah, so we saw a ton of wildlife. We drove in. The first thing you see is this prairie dog town, and then there's buffalo and wild horses. It was really cool. We came across this guy.
Ah, you knew that. Look at this. I'm going to take a crap right here. That's what I think of you boys.
Take that, buddy. So in the visitor center afterwards, they say that often they use taking a dump in front of you as a territorial thing. So that horse was showing us who was boss. So anyway, we got off and took some hikes for the rest of the day, and this was our first hike. We went up on this trail, and we were checking out all the natural sites. There were some ant hills. Yeah, here's an ant hill, and there were some bunch of flowers. But we kept noticing there were bison tracks on the trail, and we were going, these are pretty fresh tracks. And so we came up over a ridge right near the knob, the end of the trail, and we came face to face with this guy. And he looked at us and immediately started walking straight towards us. Where do you want to go? You should probably head, huh? Yeah, so we took a spur trail back and got up, a good distance from him, and then stopped. And he was still kind of coming after us. He was following back, and we just decided it was better to let him be the boss. Once again, just like that horse earlier. So he hiked on down, and he's actually, so we went on the trail you can see up to the left on top of the ridge, and we dropped down around. There's another trail that circles back. And he cut down to the trail that we had come back on, and then kind of sat behind this tree and eyeballed us. So eventually we headed on out, but it was really cool to see a bison that close and have that kind of interaction. So then we headed on down to this trail which goes to the old park entrance, and here you see I'm on a ridge looking down at this prairie dog town that we had to walk through. And you hear the squeaking of the prairie dogs here in some of this footage. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of footage of us walking through the prairie dog town. It kind of would have been cool. I thought we were going to go back through it, but we ended up circling around behind one of these big hills, actually that one that you see there. And then we got up on top of it from the backside and had a nice little hike, the landscape is so beautiful. Saw a lot more wildflowers, and then you see the Badlands type landscape, and it just is, it's stunning, especially when you see it up close. It's just gorgeous. Yeah. Here's the prairie dogs again. They're giving a warning. So then we went up, and there was this other trail, and we lost the trail early on. We somehow got off it, so we went up on top of this ridge to see if we could find it. And Brad noticed this bison carcass. So he circled around, and it's not often you see something like this, and this is pretty crazy. Yeah, so we checked out the bison carcass. We didn't touch anything, and then hiked on back to the car, and then headed out. There was an area called, I think it was the coal vein fire. So there was a coal vein underneath, buried coal vein that caught on fire. We were doing that hike, and we started hearing these birds. And I don't know what kind of birds these are. They seem to circle around a lot, and then they were mostly migrating to the north, seemed to be. So if you know, I'm going to show this video to some folks and see if anyone knows what kind of birds these are. I was wondering if they were loons.
Pretty wild.
So then we went and ate some lunch, parked next to the highest point in the park, and then hiked up to it and got these beautiful panoramic views. And it's hard to imagine a better day for visiting this park. It was, mid 70s to low 80s the whole time we were there. It was gorgeous weather. There were hardly any people there. It was just uh, one of the best experiences I've had in a national park ever. It was really cool, and the wildlife. Obviously, we saw a ton of wildlife.
Huh?
So yeah, we'd eaten lunch, and it was early afternoon, and there were a couple more hikes we could go on. This one was along a ridge and headed out to a knob, and got some great views of more of the Badlands, which you'll see in a second here. And then we headed up. One of the last places we were going to hike was the I think Wind Canyon was what it's called, and it overlooks the Little Missouri River. And so we got out and hiked there. And once again, just stunning views, good hikes. I think we ended up hiking close to 8 miles the whole day, just on these little short hikes. But yeah, once we saw this, we got back in the car, and we were going to head out and go back down to the visitor center and then head east. But as we were hitting the road, I noticed there was a herd of bison off to the left. I pulled up my phone to get some video when we drove past it. But they had some other ideas. It's funny because the car went right through them right before we got here.
Couple little guys there still.
And initially, I was a little nervous about getting too close to them, so I was staying back.
Guys are looking a little.
And so they opened up here, and I started to drive up, and then they cut us off again. And eventually, we're just inching along behind them here. And some local came up behind me and decided he didn't want to wait for some tourists to watch the buffalo. So he pushed past. And by this point, I was kind of enjoying it, so I didn't want to just push through behind him. If I'd been in a big hurry, I would have done that. But we just took some time and followed him. If they'd gotten off the road here, I would have gone on. But
I think I want to push through behind him.
by now we're part of the herd. Bar of the Trovato,
There we go.
adopted by the bison.
Yeah, stuck now.
Anyway, this was like a great ending to a really awesome day. Um, so we followed the bison on up here a little ways, and eventually they parted. Yeah, look at that guy right outside the window there. So eventually they got out of our way, and we headed on out of the park. It was an awesome day. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.